What if the wildest visions of the 70s were not found in history books, but hidden inside forgotten science fiction films, waiting to be rediscovered? Imagine a decade where directors chased cosmic truth without fear, where studios panicked at ideas that felt too real, and where audiences walked out of theaters stunned and unsure of what they had just witnessed. Are you ready to explore the films that bent reality, broke rules, and rewrote imagination? Number 15. Phase Shear, 1974. Phase Shear arrived with the reputation of being too strange for mainstream viewers, yet too intelligent to be dismissed as a simple cult oddity. It entered theaters with quiet confidence, promising a story about nature rising in slow, unstoppable rebellion. Audiences were pulled into a desert landscape where scientists studied mutated ants acting with eerie coordination, as though guided by an invisible mind directing their every move. The premise felt hypnotic. Vast sand dunes, strange geometric structures, and silent skies created a dreamlike world where humanity faced an enemy too small to fear, yet too organized to defeat. But here's the twist. Some whispered that the film pushed uncomfortable themes about human arrogance and government experiments. Rumors spread that certain scenes were trimmed to avoid triggering public fear, including a finale that hinted at an evolutionary convergence between humans and ants. Behind the scenes, the production was troubled. The studio demanded changes after test screenings left audiences unnerved and confused. Critics were unsure how to interpret the film, calling it brilliant, ambitious, or simply alien. Phase War vanished quickly from theaters, but it resurfaced decades later as scholars and cinephiles praised its bold imagery and unsettling ideas. It remains a quiet warning about the dangers of ignoring forces far greater and far more patient than ourselves. Number 14. The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976. This film landed with the reputation of being bold, artistic, and unapologetically surreal. Viewers entered expecting a sci-fi tale and instead encountered a cosmic tragedy wrapped in mystery. The story follows a lonely visitor from another world arriving on Earth to save his dying planet, using advanced knowledge hidden beneath calm expression and quiet desperation. Through shifting timelines, haunting desert imagery, and hypnotic character moments, the film reveals a vision of alienation where technology becomes both salvation and prison. But trouble soon followed. Some whispered that its themes about control, surveillance, and hidden power structures echoed real political fears of the era. Scenes that explored manipulation and emotional collapse triggered debates in several regions, and a few theaters refused to screen the film at all. Behind the scenes, the production was chaotic. Actors clashed with the intense filming schedule, and the director fought constantly with the studio to keep the film intact. Early cuts were rumored to be even stranger, filled with scenes that pushed its themes further than audiences were prepared for. Its aftermath was slow but steady. Over the years, it transformed from a misunderstood experiment into a cult monument admired for its emotional power and cosmic sadness. It stands today as a reminder that loneliness can follow us across galaxies and that not every traveler finds the home they seek. Number 13. Zardoz, 1974. Zardoz arrived with the reputation of being bizarre, audacious, and unforgettable. It entered cinemas like a thunderbolt of imagination, where mythology, science, and dystopia collided in a strange, hypnotic vision. The story follows a world divided between immortal elites living in sterile comfort and brutal survivors trapped in endless violence until a warrior discovers the truth behind their system. The film pushed limits with surreal visuals and philosophical questions about life, death, control, and rebellion. Some whispered that its themes felt too sharp for its time, exposing uncomfortable ideas about class manipulation and engineered societies. A few regional boards even debated restricting it, fearing public backlash from its intense imagery and radical message. Behind the scenes, the film was a storm. Budget issues forced wild improvisation, and actors navigated a production filled with unpredictable choices. Critics at first laughed at its boldness, calling it too strange, too messy, or too ambitious for its own good. Audiences were confused, yet unable to forget what they saw. Over the decades, Zardoz transformed into a cult legend. What once seemed chaotic now feels prophetic, with its warnings about systems built on illusion and obedience. Its legacy lingers as a surreal reminder that mankind often constructs the very cages it claims to escape. Number 12. Solaris, 1972. Solaris debuted as an art house enigma whispered about for its hypnotic pacing and emotional depth. It challenged viewers with a story less about outer space and more about the inner universe of memory, guilt, and longing. In this haunting tale, a psychologist travels to a space station orbiting a mysterious oceanic planet that manifests the deepest fears and regrets of those who approach it. Audiences expecting action instead encountered a slow, meditative journey through grief where reality bends like a fragile mirror. Some whispered that its ideas about consciousness and the nature of humanity were too dense for general audiences. A few distributors even hesitated to promote it, fearing backlash from crowds seeking clearer answers and faster stories. Behind the scenes, production tensions simmered. Long shooting days, disagreements about tone, and battles over the film length created constant strain. Critics were fiercely divided. Some hailed Solaris as a masterpiece, others dismissed it as impenetrable. Yet with time, its stature grew. It resurfaced again and again, gaining new admirers drawn to its quiet power and philosophical depth. Solaris endures as a reminder that the human soul carries galaxies of unresolved truth, and not all mysteries are meant to be solved. Number 11. Quintet, 1979. Quintet arrived with a reputation for bold ambition, set in a frozen world on the edge of extinction. The film imagines a future where Earth has plunged into endless ice and the last survivors cling to life inside decaying structures surrounded by silent snowdrifts stretching to infinity. The story follows a wanderer who becomes entangled in a deadly game, played by desperate residents seeking meaning in a dying age. But here's the twist. Some whispered that its bleak tone and violent symbolism were too disturbing for mainstream audiences. A few regions reportedly considered restrictions, worried that its themes of fate and desperation would spark controversy. Behind the scenes, the film fought constant challenges. Extreme weather conditions slowed filming, and several sequences had to be reimagined after equipment failed in the cold. Critics responded harshly, calling it too slow, too heavy, or too experimental. Audiences were left puzzled by its cryptic rules and frozen landscapes. Yet over time, Quintet found new life among cult fans who admired its haunting atmosphere and existential message. It stands today as a stark reminder that in the coldest moments of human history, hope becomes both the rarest resource and the most dangerous game. Number 10. Silent Running, 1972. Silent Running arrived with a reputation for being gentle in spirit, yet devastating in message. It told a story about ecological grief long before such ideas reached the mainstream. Viewers entered theaters expecting a simple sci-fi adventure, and instead found a quiet, heartbreaking tale of a botanist orbiting a dying Earth charged with protecting the last forests preserved inside giant domes drifting through space. The film begins with warmth and hope, but slowly transforms into a meditation on loneliness, duty, and the cost of protecting life in a world that no longer values it. Some whispered that its environmental message was too heavy for the time. A few broadcasters hesitated to show it, fearing that its themes would provoke debates they wanted to avoid. Behind the scenes, production challenges mounted. Budget cuts forced drastic changes, and several scenes were created through last-minute improvisation. The use of robot suits operated by disabled actors required careful coordination, adding both innovation and strain to the filming schedule. Critics responded with mixed reactions, puzzled by its blend of innocence, melancholy, and despair. But time worked in its favor. Silent Running resurfaced decades later as a beloved cult classic admired for its sincerity, haunting music, and powerful emotional core. It remains a reminder that even in endless darkness, a single act of care can outshine the stars. Number 9. A Boy and His Dog, 1975. A boy and his dog exploded onto the underground film scene with the reputation of being wild, unfiltered, and fearless. Audiences expecting a simple post-apocalyptic adventure instead discovered a strange, dark satire set in a wasteland where survival hinged on loyalty, cunning, and the bond between a wandering youth and his telepathic canine companion. The film shocked viewers with its unpredictable tone, shifting from bleak violence to quirky humor to surreal underground society. Some whispered that its portrayal of ruthless survivalism and its allegorical commentary on authority pushed boundaries too far. Certain screenings drew protests, and several regions debated whether to ban or restrict the film. The production itself was riddled with conflict. Severe weather, complicated desert shoots, and long night sequences drained actors and crew. Test screenings triggered furious studio notes demanding cuts and changes. Critics were polarized. Some praised its bold voice, while others accused it of chaos without purpose. Yet the film endured. It gained momentum through midnight screenings and tape trading, becoming a pillar of cult cinema. Many modern creators cite it as an influence on dystopian storytelling. Its legacy warns that civilization is fragile and that sometimes the smallest relationships hold the last sparks of humanity. Number 8. The Andromeda Strain, 1971. The Andromeda Strain arrived with the reputation of being the thinking person's sci-fi thriller. Viewers were drawn to its cold, clinical atmosphere, its attention to scientific detail, and its chilling premise about a mysterious organism recovered from space that wipes out an entire town within minutes. The film unfolds like a slow, tightening coil. Scientists race in an underground lab to understand the alien microbe before it mutates into something unstoppable. But here is the twist. Some whispered that the film was uncomfortably close to real government bioresearch, raising anxieties about containment labs, classified experiments, and the thin line between investigation and disaster. Rumors spread that officials quietly expressed concern about the film accuracy and intensity. Behind the scenes, the project faced intense pressure. Every set was built with meticulous precision, which drained time and budget. Actors struggled with the technical dialogue, and several rewrites attempted to balance realism with tension. Critics admired its intelligence, but some audiences found it too icy, too methodical. Yet the film legacy is ironclad. It became a cornerstone of realistic science fiction, influencing decades of outbreak thrillers. Its message still echoes. The greatest dangers are often too small to see, yet powerful enough to reshape the world. Number 7. Logan's Run, 1976. Logan's Run exploded onto the screen with the reputation of being dazzling, ambitious, and fearlessly futuristic. It invited viewers into a glittering domed city where youth ruled and no one lived past the age of 30. Audiences were captivated by its promise of pleasure and perfection until cracks in the illusion revealed darker truths buried beneath the surface. The story follows a Sandman enforcer who begins to question the system he once defended. His journey from loyal hunter to desperate fugitive captured the imagination of an entire generation. But some whispered that the film critique of controlled populations, artificial happiness, and state-enforced life limits cut too close to political fears of the time. A few nations debated whether it should be shown uncut. Behind the scenes, chaos simmered. Special effects malfunctioned. Costumes tore during action sequences, and rewrites plagued the script. Several scenes were shortened to avoid public controversy. Critics were divided between praise for its imagination and frustration with the studio trimming vital moments. Yet Logan's Run refused to fade. Over time, it became a cultural milestone referenced in debates about aging technology and freedom. It stands as a shining warning that perfect worlds often hide the deepest cracks. Number 6. Westworld, 1973. Westworld burst onto screens with the reputation of being thrilling, daring, and ahead of its time. Audiences entered expecting a theme park fantasy and instead found a nightmare where robots designed for entertainment malfunction and turn on their human guests. Its blend of futuristic technology, tense atmosphere, and relentless pursuit made it one of the decade's most unforgettable visions. The film explored questions about artificial intelligence, consciousness, and the consequences of playing with powers humanity cannot fully control. But here is the twist. Some whispered that real robotics researchers were unsettled by its accuracy. Rumors claimed that a few institutions disliked how the film portrayed runaway automation. Production was relentless. Early computer-generated imagery pushed boundaries, yet strained the limited technology of the era. Makeup effects for the unstoppable android antagonist challenged the crew daily. Test audiences reacted with shock and excitement, prompting the studio to cut a few moments considered too intense. Despite the rocky road, Westworld exploded into a cult triumph, inspiring sequels, books, and later a massive television reboot. Its legacy is clear. The future becomes terrifying the moment humans lose control of their own creations. Number 5. Fantastic Planet, 1973. Fantastic Planet arrived with a reputation of being a surreal masterpiece unlike anything audiences had ever seen. Its strange hand-drawn style, its dreamlike movements, and its haunting alien landscapes made viewers feel as though they were drifting through a forgotten myth. The film tells the story of a tiny oppressed species struggling to survive on a world ruled by towering blue giants who treat them as little more than living curiosities. The narrative unfolds like a poetic nightmare as the small, desperate beings learn to resist captivity and reclaim their dignity. But here's the twist. Some whispered that the film was a thinly veiled critique of oppression, colonial power, and political abuse. A few countries hesitated to screen it, fearing that its messages about defiance and rebellion would ignite controversies they wished to avoid. Behind the scenes, challenges were constant. The animation process was long, exhausting, and entirely manual, which strained the team as deadlines approached. Several planned sequences were reimagined due to production costs, and the director fought to preserve the film's surreal tone against pressure to make it more conventional. Critics were stunned by its artistry, though many viewers struggled to understand its symbolic layers. With time, Fantastic Planet rose beyond obscurity, becoming a worldwide cult phenomenon treasured for its bold imagination and emotional power. It remains a reminder that even the smallest voices can echo across entire worlds. Number 4. THX 1138, 1971. THX 1138 entered the film world with the reputation of being cold, visionary, and far ahead of its time. It presented a society stripped of individuality, where workers lived beneath the surface under constant observation, their emotions suppressed, their choices erased. Viewers expecting action instead encountered a chilling meditation on identity and control. The story follows an ordinary man who begins to question the silent machinery that governs his life. His search for truth turns into a desperate escape from a world designed to crush dissent. But some whispered that the film hit too close to real political anxieties about surveillance, authoritarian systems, and manipulated citizens. A few regions debated editing certain sequences that felt uncomfortably direct in their critique. Behind the scenes, the production was difficult. Experimental sets malfunctioned, though we cannot use that punctuation, so this must become malfunctioned often. Actors performed inside harsh white environments that created physical and emotional strain. Studio executives demanded cuts, arguing that the film was too bleak, too unusual, too challenging. Yet decades later, THX 1138 is celebrated as a masterpiece of dystopian cinema influencing countless futuristic stories. Its legacy warns that the greatest danger may be a world where freedom dissolves so slowly that no one notices until it is gone. Number 3. The Omega Man, 1971. The Omega Man emerged with the reputation of being bold, dramatic, and fiercely imaginative. It follows the last surviving man in a deserted city after a catastrophic event transforms the population into pale, nocturnal zealots determined to destroy the remnants of old civilization. Audiences were mesmerized by its empty streets, eerie silence, and the desperate struggle of a lone survivor battling fear and isolation. Some whispered that its themes about biological disaster, social collapse, and fear-driven mobs echoed real anxieties of the era. A few broadcasters debated limiting airings, worried that its portrayal of collapsing order might provoke discomfort during already tense times. Its night sequences, its suggestion of humanity teetering on the edge, and its moral questions drew both praise and concern. The production wrestled with challenges. Shooting in a major city required locking down large areas at dawn and sunset, which created constant frustration for the crew. Critics were divided. Some admired its intensity, while others dismissed it as too grim. But its legacy grew steadily. The Omega Man resurfaced through television airings and home video until it became one of the decade's most iconic visions of survival against overwhelming darkness. It stands as a reminder that civilization is fragile, and sometimes one determined soul becomes the final light left burning. Number 2. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 1977. Close Encounters arrived with the reputation of being awe-inspiring, heartfelt, and cinematic, in a way few science fiction films had ever dared to be. It invited viewers to imagine a universe not ruled by fear, but illuminated by wonder and connection. The story follows ordinary people drawn toward mysterious lights in the sky, each experiencing visions that pull them toward a monumental encounter. But here is the twist. Some whispered that officials were uneasy about the film's bold portrayal of contact between worlds. Rumors circulated that certain agencies disliked how it depicted government secrecy and public reaction. A few regions even reduced promotional materials, fearing public panic. Behind the scenes, the production was immense. Weather delays destroyed carefully planned outdoor scenes. Technical problems plagued the team as they attempted to create breathtaking cosmic visuals with technology that barely existed. The director often clashed with the studio over cost concerns and story decisions, but the results astonished audiences. Its legacy is legendary. Close Encounters reshaped the emotional language of sci-fi, turning alien visitation into a story of hope, curiosity, and human courage. It endures as a reminder that not all mysteries seek to harm, some simply invite us to look upward and dream. Number 1. Alien, 1979. Alien struck theaters with the reputation of being terrifying, groundbreaking, and unforgettable. It blended haunted house tension with deep space isolation, creating a nightmare that crawled beneath the skin of audiences worldwide. Viewers walked in expecting a standard sci-fi tale and instead faced a relentless vision of fear unfolding aboard a lonely commercial vessel drifting through cold, uncharted space. The story follows a crew who stumble upon a derelict craft and unleash a life form beyond comprehension. Panic spreads, betrayal arises, and survival becomes a race against something that adapts faster than they can react. Some whispered that certain regions wanted limitations on the film because its intensity pushed boundaries rarely seen in mainstream cinema. A few distributors hesitated at first, worried that audiences might not endure its unbroken tension. Behind the scenes, chaos brewed. Actors endured suffocating heat inside cramped sets. Equipment failed. Practical effects required endless experimentation. One legendary scene left the cast genuinely shocked, fueling rumors that real reactions appeared on screen. Critics praised its brutal beauty, and viewers began whispering about it in hushed tones. Over time, Alien grew into a cultural titan, influencing decades of horror and sci-fi. Its legacy is clear. In the vast, unknown humanity, greatest fear is discovering we are not alone and not prepared. The 70s dared to dream without limits, creating worlds that still challenge our imagination today. These films remind us that science fiction is not only about lasers and spaceships, but about truth, fear, hope, and the fragile heart of humanity. Which forgotten masterpiece shook you the most? Share your thoughts, join the discussion, and do not forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more hidden cinematic journeys.